Superman and Lois, Season 3, Episode 3, In Cold Blood. This episode starts out with a bang as we see Clark having a horrific nightmare while he is sleeping during the night. His nightmare shows him waking up in bed with Lois missing, and he flies off as Superman up into space, hovering above the Earth listening for her. He hears her screaming for him, and he flies down to Metropolis to see the city crumbling to the ground all around him. He sees Lois from afar outside the Daily Planet building, reaching her hand out for him, screaming his name. He flies towards her as the Daily Planet building starts to crumble to the ground with debris falling all around her and Superman flying as fast as he can to save her. The Daily Planet globe on top of the building starts falling and drops off the building and is falling fast right towards Lois. Superman is flying fast, screaming her name. We see Superman save Lois just as the Daily Planet globe gets to the ground. Clark wakes up in bed in Smallville with a very scared and worried look on his face, and we can hear his heart beating very fast. He looks over at Lois to see her sleeping peacefully. The next morning, Clark and Lois sit at the kitchen table together, and Lois calls her sister Lucy to tell her she has cancer. She tells the Cushings, Kyle, Lana, and Sarah about her diagnosis, as well as Chrissy, Natalie, and John Henry Irons. Finally, later on that evening at the Kent farm, they tell Lois's dad, Sam Lane, about the diagnosis. He asks Clark if there's any Kryptonian technology at his fortress that could help. Clark tells him that his mother's AI says there's nothing she can do or that the fortress can do for her. The news really hurts Sam Lane as he breaks down hard when Lois tells him the news. The next morning, Lois goes to the Gazette to get Chrissy going on the Bruno Mannheim case to look at old case files that Judge Reagan is letting them look at. Clark seems hesitant to let her go to the Gazette but does not stop her. But he reminds her about her appointment for her first chemo treatment. She tells Clark she's not just going to sit around all day and do nothing while waiting for her appointment. Lois and Clark hear something in the kitchen and they both walk in to find the boys fixing breakfast for Lois and Clark. John Henry Irons is at Lana's house setting up the rest of the security system for them. Sarah asks her mom if the security system is supposed to keep bad people out or her in, and Lana says to her, for now, a little bit of both. Sarah demands to know why she is in trouble, and Lana tells her because you lied about going to Metropolis. Lana tells her to come straight home after school and after her dinner with Kyle. At the Gazette, Chrissy tells Lois about one prisoner that Judge Reagan granted early release to, and his name is James DiStefano, who is a tech genius turned killer and has no Mannheim connections. They see a physician's signature on James DiStefano's paperwork and find out it is Dr. Alistair Hook. Lois tells Chrissy that he used to fix up Mannheim's men when they got hurt. They find out he works somewhere else now. They see that he now works for Danner Medical and that they have facilities all over Metropolis, so Chrissy and Lois both go to Metropolis. Clark is at the New Carthage Cancer Center waiting for Lois. He calls her to see where she is, but she doesn't pick up. The front desk nurse tells Clark that she sees this all the time with new first-time patients. Lois and Chrissy arrive at one of the Danner Medical Centers, but find it completely abandoned, but yet there's still all kinds of equipment there. Plus, the electricity is still working. They both find fresh blood droplets on some transparent plastic sheet hanging up. Lois uses her DNA forensic kit her dad gave to her for her birthday. Chrissy gets a text from Clark asking if she knows where Lois is. Chrissy asks Lois why Clark is texting her, and Lois tells her because she missed her appointment for chemotherapy. Chrissy gets mad at Lois for missing it and tells her to reschedule it now so she can make sure that Lois did in fact reschedule. Sam comes by the house and Clark tells him that Lois missed her first chemo appointment, and Sam gets angry about that and tells Clark that both of them are going to have to work together on this to make sure that she goes to her treatments. The boys, along with Natalie and Sarah, meet up at the diner after school and just chill out and hang out together, even though Sarah is not supposed to be there. Natalie asks about getting a gift for Lois, something made that she couldn't return, and they all think it is a good idea. They all tell Jonathan that he needs to tell Candace about Eliza and the kiss and the gold chain, and he says he will. Back at home, Clark is upset with Lois for missing her chemo treatment, and he tells Lois that Bruno Mannheim's story. Lois tells Clark that she already rescheduled for tomorrow, and Clark says that is great and that he will be going with her. Later on that evening, Sarah and Kyle have dinner together, and they discuss the party she went to and why she's the one in trouble. And Sarah tells Kyle that they just got a new security system put in. She says that John Henry Irons put it in, and Kyle is very skeptical about that. John Henry Irons is back at his place and analyzing the footage and sounds from his and Lana's attack, trying to figure out how that bad guy's powers work. Natalie asks her dad about giving Lois her mom's old watch. She wants to engrave their names on it, and John Henry isn't down with the idea and says that this Lois isn't her mom, and she tells him that she knows that, and he says she can do what she wants because it's her watch. Jonathan takes Candace home, and as she goes in, her father comes out and admires Jonathan's truck, saying that that is a nice truck, and he asks how much he paid for it. He tells Candace's dad that the truck was a gift, and Jonathan gets in the truck and goes home. During the night, Clark has the same dream he had before, only this time he doesn't get to Lois in time before the Daily Planet globe hits the ground, killing her. Clark once again wakes up in a panicked state and is breathing heavily. Again, we hear his heart beating extremely fast, and he looks over at Lois to see her sleeping peacefully once again. The next morning, we see Lois and Clark sitting in the waiting room at the New Carthage Cancer Center. Clark switches seats with her because she says hers is very uncomfortable. Clark picks up an emergency with his super hearing. He tells Lois it's a mudslide in Nepal, and she tells him to go and that she will be fine. As she is sitting there by herself, she has a panic attack. Lois is able to snap out of it when she gets a text from Chrissy telling her good luck with her chemo, and Lois responds to the text asking her if there are any updates on any other Danner medical locations. When Chrissy doesn't answer the text back, Lois leaves her appointment and finds Chrissy at another abandoned Danner medical facility in Metropolis. Chrissy gets mad at Lois for telling her that she cannot keep skipping her appointments. Lois goes into the facility, and Chrissy reluctantly follows behind. At the mayor's office in Smallville, Lana and Emily Fan are talking about what happened the other day. Emily says the public thinks that there is more to the story, and Lana tells her that she put out a statement the DOD gave her, and that, in all honesty, she isn't really sure what happened either. Emily tells her that maybe she needs to tell the public that. Kyle comes in to give Lana a cup of coffee, but at the same time, he is trying to get information out of her about the new security system and John Henry Irons. Lana gets mad at him for trying to snoop in her business and basically tells him to leave, which he reluctantly does. Clark gets back to the New Carthage Cancer Center after helping out in Nepal with the mudslide and finds out from the front desk that Lois missed another appointment, to which Clark is not happy about. In Metropolis, Lois and Chrissy are in the Danner Medical Facility, and they start looking around for clues to help them piece together the story and what Bruno Mannheim is really up to. Lois hears her phone go off but ignores it, and Chrissy says, "I know who that was. What are you trying to do, get Superman mad at me?" As Lois and Chrissy are looking around, they hear a group of men come in, and they both quickly find a place to hide, which is in a freezer. Chrissy turns around in the freezer, and both her and Lois see many units of blood inside the freezer. Chrissy and Lois examine the blood units to see if they can find out whose blood it is. Chrissy tells Lois to use her ELT to call Superman. She pulls it out and activates it, but after a few seconds, he doesn't show up, and Lois tells Chrissy that it usually takes a few seconds, maybe 10, for him to show up. They then realize they have done something to the freezer to where Superman can't hear the ELT inside the freezer. So they are trapped. Superman is up in space, hovering above the Earth, listening for Lois and Chrissy, but he hears nothing. He flies down to the DOD to tell Sam and John Henry Irons, who's there, that Lois is missing. Superman explains what happened, and Sam gets mad, but John Henry Irons tries to calm both of them down. Superman tells both of them that she must be somewhere heavily insulated, and that is why he cannot hear her or the ELT. John Henry Irons asks for permission from Sam to access his satellites so his AI can run a scan, which Sam lets him do, and John Henry Irons tells Superman that they will find her. At school, Jonathan gets an alert on his phone and goes out to the parking lot to check, and he sees that his truck has been stolen. He goes back inside and tells his brother and Natalie about it, and he sees Candace. Jonathan blames Candace's dad. Candace does not like that he accused her father of stealing his truck, so she storms out of the school away from Jonathan. Jordan and Natalie both agree that he was the one who stole his truck, and Natalie comes up with a plan and tells Jonathan and Jordan that maybe they can steal the truck back themselves without involving the police. Back in in the blood freezer, Lois and Chrissy patiently wait to see if they can hear any more movement or voices. Chrissy tells Lois that she needs to stop with this and get her treatments even if she is scared. As they are talking, they hear more voices coming towards the freezer. That night, Lana comes home and jumps on Sarah about what she told Kyle about the security system and John Henry Irons. Sarah and Lana argue and get into a pretty bad fight, which ends up with Lana slapping Sarah hard across the face. Sarah is shocked and stunned and retreats to her room, with her mom trying to apologize for doing that to her. Natalie, Jonathan, and Jordan devise a plan to steal back Jordan's truck and the watch that Natalie was working on, which was inside the truck. Jonathan's truck was taken to a chop shop where Candace's dad and others plan to chop it up. Natalie, wearing her suit, deploys a gas grenade in there, which shoots out gas which incapacitates everyone. Jonathan holds his breath and races to find his truck through the gas while Natalie and Jordan take care of the others. Jonathan finds his keys and makes it to his truck and is able to speed out of there with Natalie and Jordan following close behind. Back at the medical facility, one of the bad guys opens up the freezer to see Lois Lane standing in there. He holds her at gunpoint and tells her to come out, which she does. Lois comes out of the freezer with the bad guy behind her still holding a gun at her back. They all hear a strange sound and turn around to see Chrissy standing just outside the freezer with the ELT activated. Lois then screams as loud and as hard as she can for Superman. Superman at the DOD finally hears her and tells John Henry and Sam that he hears her and flies off fast to Metropolis. Superman gets there and crashes through the roof of the facility with the three guys with guns pointed at him. Superman speeds at them, knocking all of them down, and tells Lois and Chrissy to go to somewhere safe and call the DOD. And suddenly Superman gets knocked down by two kryptonite beams. One of the remaining bad guys has hand blaster cannons on each hand which shoots out kryptonite beams. The bad guy fires them again at Superman, and Superman has a hard time fighting back. The bad guy pins Superman to a wall with the beams. John Henry Irons flies to Superman's location and throws his hammer at the bad guys, which knocks him back away from Superman while at the same time disabling the hand blasters. Superman falls to the ground trying to catch his breath. John Henry lands and helps Superman up. They both turn towards the bad guy, who is still alive, and he detonates an explosive which detonates throughout the facility, blowing the place up. Superman and John Henry Irons fly out and land in the parking lot in front of Lois and Chrissy, and you can see Superman is not happy with Lois at all. That night, back at the Kent farm, Clark voices his frustrations with Lois about her going off on this dangerous endeavor to uncover what Bruno Mannheim is doing and for also missing 2 chemo treatments. Lois says to him she is doing that to keep her mind occupied and because everyone is treating her differently, and she says she is not fragile, not yet. She is afraid of her body being pumped full of toxic drugs, her taste buds changing, her loss of energy, and her hair falling out, and she's not ready for that yet. Clark tells her he knows she is scared, but he also says the way they will get through this is as a team with him and her together. Sam calls Lois to check up on her and also to tell them that the blood they found that Lois took a sample of and sent to him is Clark's. She hangs up and tells Clark that the blood was his, and we see a very worried look on Clark's face. In the underground bunker, we see units of Clark's blood being pumped into Henry Miller, who is now in a tube filled with water. We hear the doctor talking with one of Mannheim's men, saying if he keeps this up, that they won't be able to resuscitate him. The bad guy tells Mannheim that he wants him alive. He tells the doctor to find someone that they can push further, and he walks up to the glass and taps it, and we see Miller open his eyes, and he starts struggling to get out as the bad guy walks away. All 3 of the kids make it back to the Kent farm that night, and Candace comes to see Jonathan, and she says she found the watch that they were looking for and gives it to Jonathan, and they both talk and try to smooth things over. Back at Lana's house, Lana tries to apologize to Sarah through her closed bedroom door, but she doesn't respond. Sarah ran out to find her dad at the diner where he was talking with Chrissy, who told him about the day she had. Sarah finds Kyle there and just hugs her dad. The next morning, Natalie and the boys give Lois her mother's watch to let her know that they are rooting for her to beat the cancer. Lois, with Clark by her side, finally makes their way together to Lois's first chemo treatment, and that is how Superman and Lois Season 3, Episode 3, In Cold Blood ends. Well, can I just say, damn, what an episode this was. I mean, it starts off with a powerful, suspenseful, scary sequence of Clark having a really bad nightmare of Metropolis experiencing some kind of earthquake or seismic activity. It shows concrete cracking open into huge holes and buildings falling and crumbling all around, and the Daily Planet building being shaken so bad that pieces of it crumble to the ground, and Lois standing right outside the front of it and is about to be crushed by the falling globe from the top of the building. Even as fast as Superman is flying to try and save her and avoid things falling all around him, we are not sure if he's going to make it in time to save her, but he does, and that's when he wakes up and the title card drops. I mean, wow, what a way to open an episode. I mean, it was just heart-pounding, nail-biting, edge-of-your-seat, thrilling. I mean, I loved it. The opening sequence, it really has a lot of vibes from Bryan Singer's 2006 film Superman Returns, when the earthquake happens in Metropolis and Superman catches the Daily Planet globe before it crashes to the ground. That's one thing I thought of, which was really cool. It also is kind of reminiscent of Donner's first Superman movie during the earthquake sequence, except the earthquake in that movie happens in California, not in Metropolis. So, but yeah, I mean, I can see some similarities, so there you go. This episode also shows us how Lois is dealing with her cancer diagnosis, which as of right now is not good. She is putting the Bruno Mannheim case before her own health. Not only that, but we see she skips her first chemo treatments twice. She has to tell everyone she knows and loves about her diagnosis, which is hard, and the one who takes it the hardest is her dad, who breaks down at the news. We don't see it, and it's not really said out loud in the episode, but we know that the blood Lois found and all those units of blood we see when Chrissy and Lois are trapped belong to Clark. For me, it was sort of inferred that it is Bruno Mannheim using Clark's blood, and that is how Henry Miller and Atom Man got his superpowers. I liked how this episode is taking things we have seen before in other movies and TV shows about Superman and turning them into fresh new ideas and putting different spins on them. It has a lot of similarities to TV shows like Smallville. In Smallville Season 3, when Lionel Luthor gets Clark's blood and then it is stolen from Lionel by Morgan Edge. Also, like when in the first season of Lois and Clark: The New Adventures of Superman in the episode Batman, when Lex Luthor gets some of Superman's hair and makes an identical clone look-alike of Superman. Finally, in the 1987 film Superman 4: The Quest for Peace, when Lex Luthor and his nephew Lenny steal a strand of Superman's hair on display in a museum, and they use it to kind of clone Superman, but instead of an identical clone look-alike, Lex creates Nuclear Man, who almost kills Superman in the film. So yeah, the whole blood plot point there are a lot of similarities to other iterations of Superman in TV and movies, and possibly even the comics as well. Now, I must say this, there's one thing I'm going to call Clark out on, which I hardly ever do. When he was at the second appointment that Lois booked after neglecting her first chemo treatment, he should not have left her, especially after getting on to her about missing the first one. Yes, I get it. He's Superman, and he can't just stop being Superman, but at that moment, he needed to stay with his wife to make sure she went to that appointment. Now, had it been a nuclear bomb going off somewhere, or something really bad like another wave of antimatter threatening the Earth, then yes, he should go take care of it. But a mudslide in the country of Nepal? Sorry, nope. Natural disasters do happen, and Superman is not always going to be around to help stop those things or help. If he had stayed there with her, maybe she wouldn't have had the panic attack, and he would have been able to keep her from leaving to go off on the Bruno Mannheim case again. So I'm going to say Clark was in the wrong on this one. And speaking of calling people out, Lana was way out of line when she came in that night and literally bit Sarah's head off about what she told Kyle. I mean, how was Sarah supposed to know that there were some things she could or could not say? I mean, Lana never told her what to tell and what not to tell Kyle. So, Lana, your reasons for getting on to your daughter about that was bullshit, and you know it. And you literally pushed your daughter to smart off to you because you started that whole thing. Now, do I condone that kind of behavior that Sarah showed to her mom when she smarted off to her like that? No, I do not, because I was taught to respect your parents and your elders at all times. But again, like I said, you started this argument, Lana. Also, Lana, I understand it got heated very fast, but the slap on the face to your daughter was totally uncalled for as well. I mean, what are you trying to be? Will Smith slapping Chris Rock at the Oscars? I mean, seriously, knock that crap off. There's also something else that got me thinking, and that's when Jonathan told Candace that it was her dad that stole her truck. I really think that deep down, Candace knew her dad did steal his truck, especially the way she acted towards Jonathan when Jonathan told her. I mean, come on, he's a criminal, a freaking drug dealer, and someone who works at a chop shop, and sounds like a piss poor dad whose professions are in some really bad stuff. So deep down, I really think Candace knew that her dad was the one responsible for stealing his truck. I loved the scene where Jonathan, Natalie, and Jordan steal the truck back. It was like an all-out action scene from like a movie or TV show from the 90s. I mean, hell yeah, I loved that. Though parts of it were a little far-fetched, and the one part was Jonathan being able to hold his breath that long through a gas grenade that Natalie deployed from her suit. I mean, I'm really surprised he didn't pass out from holding his breath for so long. But either way, it was a really good, really fun, really action-packed scene, and I loved it. The scene where Lois and Chrissy outsmart the bad guys when they get found and Chrissy uses the ELT to call Superman was awesome. I mean, it doesn't show these characters as stupid. You know, they think through their problems and they try to devise ways to, you know, try and get out of their problem or make their problem less severe. And that's what they did in that situation. You know, Lois steps out of the freezer, and then, you know, Chrissy hides, then comes behind the bad guy and just barely steps out of the freezer and then activates the ELT to where Superman can finally hear it. So that was cool. The battle between Superman and the bad guy with the kryptonite hand blasters was really brutal. Superman almost got his ass handed to him. But it was awesome to finally see John Henry Irons suited up again with his hammer helping Superman out. I have said this once and I will say it again. He's like a combination of Iron Man and Thor rolled up into one, and it's so awesome to watch. I can understand Lois's hesitation about getting chemo and her being scared and trying to occupy her mind with things just so she doesn't have to think about her diagnosis. And I must say that if I ever get cancer, I can say that I may not fight it either. I may just let it take me so I don't have to undergo chemo, radiation, or surgery. The only reason I would fight it is if I had a family, a wife, and kids. But if I was single like I am right now, then I would probably just, you know, live my life and let it take me when it takes me. The visual and special effects, as well as the score and the writing for this episode, once again, top notch. This is not TV grade. This is major motion picture grade. I mean, they don't hold back. They give this show the kind of love that they give major motion pictures and major superhero movies. The one thing I'm wondering about is if Clark's nightmares about Metropolis crumbling to the ground with Lois calling for him are going to continue and are going to be part of what is coming, or if this is just him having these nightmares just because she's sick right now and he's unsure, you know, if she's going to make it or not. So anxious to see if these nightmares, you know, continue to be a part of this season. Okay, this is all that I have to say about this episode, so now it's grading time. I'm going to give Superman and Lois Season 3, Episode 3, In Cold Blood, a high-flying A+. Here are my final thoughts. This is another great episode that this show has created. Again, this show has and is tackling some very real-world things that are dangerous and freaking scary. I don't know if any of these kinds of things were done in the comics, but as far as I know, this has never been done in any of the previous Superman movies or TV shows that I know of. I am really anxious to see where we go from here, and this episode is once again another fantastic episode with action, heart, and emotion. And everyone involved with this show, from the cast to the crew to just everyone. They do a fantastic, amazing, brilliant job with this show. I am so in love with this show. I can't get enough of it. It's just wonderful. So with that being said, I'm going to say thank you all so much for watching. Good night. God bless. I love all of you, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.